Hello, everyone. Today, we're joined by Carmen Uphoff, who is currently the Chief Operating Officer of respeggt Group, which works to end the horrifying practice of chicken culling in the egg industry through innovative technology. For context, the egg industry grinds billions of male chicks every year, given they cannot lay eggs, and doing so is a way for them to cut costs and be more profitable. respeggt has done remarkable work to change that in Europe, having already delivered more than 1 billion respeggt eggs and around 10 million respeggt laying hens into the supply chains of table egg production. We're incredibly glad to be joined by Carmen, and I think there's no better way to begin than to ask, what exactly is a respeggt egg and how does the technology work?
Hi, thank you so much for your time and your interest. So yeah, of course, what we do is a gender identification in the hatching egg, meaning that we can identify the gender within the hatching egg already within the incubation process, so that we, on day 9 of the incubation, already determine if there's a male or female embryo inside. And then we can select those, separate them, and we only put the female hatching eggs back into the incubator so that after 21 days, only female chicks hatch. The male hatching eggs on the other side are produced into animal feed, which is really good protein source in animal feed, and therefore have a really good use as well. And there's no chick culling, of course, then in the supply chain. And what we do after then is that we control the supply chain, meaning that we make sure the chicks that are free of chick culling are always segregated in their system. And for that reason, I think the video stopped. Now here we go. And for that reason, we can then make sure that the entire supply chain is free of chick culling. And this, of course, in the end leads to a table egg, a respeggt table egg, as we call it, free of chick culling. And that's how it's done.
Yeah, I want to talk about the business model. So how much would you value the market for sex detection of eggs?
Well, we are of course talking about a high value product that is high in animal welfare. So meaning that for that reason, we are of course targeting a group of people or clients, consumers that are willing to pay a bit more for the egg, the table eggs, for the value free of chick culling. And that is what we are seeking to find. But we actually see a great potential all over the world, because there's all over the world people that care about animal welfare.
Yeah, and where do you currently operate? And I read a Vox article where you mentioned that there were also plans to expand into the US. So how does that look like? And what do you decide? How do you decide where you want to operate or expand to?
So we've been focusing for the last years. Our company exists since 2019, merely on the German European market, because that is where all the research was started, because there was funding by the German government to the universities to research innovosexing, as it's called in the sector. And therefore, there is a high bubble of research on this topic. And we come from this market. So the main goal in the beginning was to end chick culling in Germany and the markets around it. And that is what we've been doing. And now the technology is so good and we are already very established in this market that we are starting to expand. And actually, there's no clear decision on where to go first. So it's all about who's interested, who sees a potential working together with us. And this is mainly the hatcheries. So the hatcheries are, of course, our direct contract partners, because we install the technology in their building and do the service for them. But of course, in the end, you also need like a retailer or others that are really keen on giving this product a chance and bringing it into the market. So it's a whole group effort, let's say, in the supply chain, and therefore we seek to find those partners. It really doesn't matter where that is, especially only it's about, well, finding those partners and finding a target group, a consumer group that is willing to pay a bit more. So of course we are looking into the US, but we are also looking at many other markets where we see, okay, there is a consumer group that is willing to pay more for those eggs.
Yeah, and why has there been an increase in the demand for your technology by companies over recent years? Is there growing awareness of what's happening to male chicks in the industry, or is there also just legislation that's being passed that's banning chick culling?
So I think it's been a bit of both, but mostly it all started because of retailers willing to put the product in the market and really wanting to have a good new, let's say, it's all a bit about animal welfare campaigns for the retailers as well, to have a great image and show that they put effort into having higher value products in the market, and also, well, really fitting to the consumer demand today, which is more and more towards animal welfare. So that fits really great. And of course, then with that interest and this product being introduced to markets, also legislation catches up. And therefore, we have the effect of more and more countries in Europe having laws to forbid chick culling. And that's a bit how it works out. So I think it's a bit of both, but especially the willingness to introduce this into the market. I think that's a great thing. And to be honest, no hatchery likes to cull male chicks. It's not that they like to do it, it's just there was no alternative so far. And so it's been part of their daily business if they like it or not. And I think therefore there's also like a supply chain effort for everyone to stop it. And the nice thing is also what needs to be changed is that technology needs to be implemented in the hatchery. That's it. If we talk about cages and getting rid of cages in housing laying hens, it's much bigger effort because you need to change the entire barn, you need to change the management, it's a huge investment. So that's way more difficult and takes much more time than just putting a machine in a hatchery, which we even provide. Doesn't need to be paid. It is about paying per analysis. So it's a business model where there's no huge investment necessary by the farmers, by the hatcheries. So it's much easier to implement, and you still have a great communication in the end, which is free of chick culling. Even if a consumer doesn't know what chick culling is, if you read free of chick culling on the packaging, you realize that's supposed to be something good. I should support this. So I think it's much easier to communicate as well, and that's why it's been so successful so far, I guess.
Yeah, and how much does it cost for a company to use your technology?
Well, so the companies, and that depends a lot on the country we work with, because we provide technology, but so there are many circumstances because we have consumables, there's labor involved. So with every country we go in, there's a different price, of course. But what in the end happens is that, of course, the hatchery will sell the chicks for a higher price, and then the laying hens will cost more, and then the eggs will cost more. And what we see today is that when you go in the supermarket in Europe, you will pay 1 to 3 euro cents plus per egg. And that is actually not such a huge difference. So the nice thing here as well is that the laying hen, of course, has a higher value and price, but she will lay around 250 to 300 eggs a year. So you can divide those costs to the eggs, and then for the consumer in the end, the effect is not that big. And therefore, we, until now, if we in the group of organic and free range egg, where you automatically hit those people that are willing to pay more for animal welfare, we haven't had any difficulties in the demand and the sales of the eggs.
Yeah, and are there efforts underway to try to reduce the cost of this technology, or are they not necessarily needed given that companies already prefer like using the technology because the process of culling newly hatched male chickens is more expensive and something they probably don't want?
So in general, of course, we always have the effort to get a bit of a lower price. This has a lot to do with volumes. The bigger we get, because we need to produce consumables and so on, the cheaper we might get. And also, we, of course, work a lot in this, research and development. So make our technology more efficient and therefore also reducing costs. Right now, it's really working well with the price we have and see in the market. So I believe that we can very good start and work as we do today. But of course, we will try to reduce the price a bit in the future.
Yeah, and what are some of the regulatory hurdles that Respect has to overcome? So I've read that one of the promising things about your technology is that it doesn't affect the inner part of the egg. And there are other forms of technology that are a bit more intrusive. So is that something that has helped you overcome some of these hurdles?
Yeah, so there's several aspects that people use when trying to evaluate the different technologies that exist today. So let's say there are around 5 to 6 different categories where you can, which you can use to evaluate technology. For example, it's volumes of a machine. It's which genetics can be analyzed, the day of the in vivo sexing, so when is it done, the price, of course. And so there are different, the invasivity of the technology. So there are different aspects about it. What is great of our technology is that we are able to do all colors of genetics, of laying hens, so brown and white colors. We are very early in the incubation, so the earliest today possible. We are on day 9 of incubation. There are other technologies that are later. So that's also like an ethical debate on when should in vivo sexing happen. And then, of course, there's the question of, does the egg need to be opened and how much? And we are still in need of a small hole in the egg because we take liquid to do an analysis, but this hole is only 0.3 millimeters. So that is really small. And we are doing this non-invasively. So by air suction, we take the liquid and we analyze it. There are others that do the same invasively. There are, of course, also methods that work with the closed egg. So that's a positive for others, but then they have the negative aspect of being very late in the incubation. So there is no perfect technology today. Everyone's trying their best. But we feel pretty confident on being on the right track today, being very early, being able to do all genetics. That is really great, and being minimally invasive and in the technology itself as well. So that is why, of course, we're still trying to get better, but we're quite happy where we are right now.
Yeah, so you mentioned about the incubation day, right? So what exactly is the ethical debate there? Is it that the earlier the better?
Yes, so that's been a crazy roller coaster ride in Germany because they did define a law or legislation saying that that generally in chick culling in German hatcheries is forbidden since 1st of January last year, 2022. And then they put in a second part of the law saying, but up from 224, in vivo sexing is only allowed up until including day 6 of the incubation. And that was a crazy idea because it was during a time where no technology like such existed or is still not existing. And it all came from very old studies saying that up from day 7, pain perception of the embryo is possible. But these studies come from the 1960s, so that's really old research. And it turned out that, the German ministry therefore decided for agriculture, they decided, okay, if we want to go with that law, we need to prove again that pain perception really exists on day 7. And they therefore funded new research by the Technological University of Munich. And this research has just been published a few weeks ago. And it has completely new research results saying that, so up from day 13, there is a brain activity by the embryo. Up from day 15, there are other stimuli working so that we can really more and more determine that pain perception starts. But therefore, they decided, okay, day 13 then is the day where there is the possibility of pain perception. So we need to change the German legislation, and that is just in progress right now. So we are waiting for this to get final, but there has already been publications from the ministry about the progress and that they want to change the day 7 to day 13. So everything, including day 12, is allowed. And we really hope that this will now be like a pilot, or let's say, a way to go in Europe and other countries to really, identify that pain perception might start up from day 13. So every technology working before that is completely fine. And that is actually, that's been a great relief for all of us, knowing that we can keep on working, to be honest. We always felt confident because we do our own research and we couldn't understand at all where the day 7 is coming from. So it seems that research, or the official research that's been published, has catched up, and we're quite happy about that.
Yeah, I want to talk a bit about this legislation. So are companies that are currently selling eggs, are they finding ways to like get around that through like sourcing eggs from different countries that don't have those laws?
Yeah, of course, that's happening. And that's why we have more and more voices calling for EU law, because the situation is this: a German hatchery is not allowed to cull chicks, but a Dutch and a Polish and Austrian hatchery, they are allowed to do so. So of course you can import chicks as a farmer. That's completely legal. They are completely legal to do this. So it's not even an illegal gray zone they're working in, but it's a completely legal road they've taken. And this, of course, leads to very different prices in the market and competition that isn't really fair. But there have been two really good developments here. So one is that the retailers in Germany decided we only want to sell eggs free of chick culling. So there's no competition in the fresh egg market. It's really small, at least. So that this helped a lot to the German legislation that the retailers did catch up on it. And then the second one is that we, of course, also see that the others producing for the German market then also need to adapt to the German law because they want to go into the shelves of the German supermarkets. And that is the situation we are facing. But then we have other countries that are starting to look into this topic. So there's a law in France since the 1st of January 23. And even Italy has decided to do a law that forbids chick culling up from 2026. So there are at least now 3 countries that decided to do legislation in this manner. And then, as I said, more and more countries are seeking to Brussels to saying we need an EU law to have fair competition and a plain playground that's safe for everyone.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that EU law passes sometime soon. So I was also wondering, are there any other bottlenecks that Respect faces apart from like some of the legislation not necessarily being up to date? So is it like funding, patents, recruiting talent, scaling up? Yeah, sorry, I think I disconnected. The weather is really bad here. But you were able to get the question, right?
Yes, I was able to get the question. So to be honest, bottlenecks aren't so terrible for us. So we are in quite a good situation, expanding and investing in more technology right now. The thing we face a bit is the volumes that are asked on some markets. Because of course we develop technology for European markets. We said, okay, a machine that can do around 5 million females a year is a good machine. And if you need more, you put another machine next to it. And then we have quite a good volume for let's say, average European hatchery. But then, of course, if you go into other countries that have like crazy volumes of eggs, then this is very small for them. And then we would automatically need to put like 10 machines next to each other, which is, of course, like from a space perspective, not really possible. So that is what we're facing right now. If we want to expand to other markets that are really big, we need to develop technology that can handle higher volumes. And that is, of course, what we also going to face here, and we're going to start develop. And that is, I think, a normal step in this direction. And that's a bottleneck we face right now, but we are working on it. So I'm quite positive here as well.
Yeah, so that was really insightful stuff about just the business model and how Respect works. So I think we mentioned some of the other actors in the space, but is there any scope for collaboration between the different companies? I remember, I know there's like Seuss and there's also Excite. So do they collaborate or are things just very heavily patented?
Well, we are always very much open to speak to everyone developing, doing research, seeing if there is like a common interest in maybe joining up and doing things together. That is, of course, what we do. But to be honest, so there are so many that are really early in research already that it's difficult to say if how fruitful really this technology or the idea they do is developing. And then it's also, of course, if you, for example, talk about exit, they have a great approach, but it's GMO, it's gene editing, which in European markets is not accepted, or at least in some European countries is really not accepted at all. So there, of course, we need to look, okay, what does make sense and what is really being asked in the markets. But I think in other countries, there might be a huge demand for that. So it really depends on the market we're talking about. And of course, on when are people or when are new researchers really being practice ready, because we know about over 10 research projects worldwide, but some of them are working since 10 years and there hasn't been any news or results of really getting started. I think the difficulty, and we face that as well, is going from a lab research into a real hatchery and working, because the conditions are very, very different. And so it doesn't really necessarily work in a real time hatchery. And we had to adapt our technology quite a lot. I think we're now working on the 6th version of our machinery to really handle the circumstances of high humidity, not always the cleanest air, and so on, in a hatchery, so that we can really work there and have our technology running perfectly.
And so does that mean that each hatchery has different needs and the technology has to be adapted to those needs, or is it something that like most hatcheries can like adopt?
Yeah, I think most hatcheries can adopt. So it's a hatchery is mostly a hatchery. It might depend worldwide, of course, in volumes, in size, maybe the different technology in some details. But in general, what they do is they hatch chicks, and a chick needs 21 days to be hatched. So that is, of course, often the same. But here, what I meant is especially the circumstances in a lab versus a hatchery, those are really difficult and different, and therefore this is the next step when you do research, to really go in a hatchery and see, does it even work here? And of course, you don't want to intervene too much with the hatchery for daily business, because they still need to do the volumes and numbers they do every day, and so you need to work around their normal system to make it possible to be a really successful collaboration.
And what does your ideal timeline look like? So when are you expecting for most eggs to not have to be produced through chicken culling?
So, well, I think if we're talking worldwide, I really cannot tell you any number. It's you need to see that, of course, we're talking, I think, in most markets in the world about a niche market that is high animal welfare. It's not the cheapest egg in the market, because there are, of course, people in need of eating eggs and not having enough income to really buy high animal welfare. And so I think really ending chick culling worldwide, that's going to be a long way. But of course, we're seeking for that aim, and that is what we want to do. I think it's now step by step to get more and more in the market, getting bigger in Europe, and then going overseas, hopefully within the next 1 or 2 years. So that is a bit what we're trying to face here.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see what will happen in the future, and how beneficial that will be for chicken welfare. I want to now move on to some more personal questions. So what got you interested in animal welfare?
Well, actually, I grew up on a laying hen farm, so I didn't come that far. And I studied agricultural economics, and then I went to work in a retailer and working in the sustainability department in a big retailer in Germany. So I've always been interested in animal welfare and seeking more sustainable food production. So I think I'm right where I belong, actually. It's been really a blast, because what we do is a combination of being really near to agriculture, but then of course also doing more animal welfare production within the industry that is existing. And I think that's actually, for me, the best approach to do animal welfare, is finding ways to implement it in the today used systems, step by step, making things better. Of course, we are not like changing the world towards the best animal welfare and the best egg, but with others together, we are trying to reach that aim. And I think that's what's fun about it.
Yeah, and what does a typical day in the life look like for you?
Well, so to be honest, what we do is we have offices in Germany and the Netherlands, and we are therefore often traveling to the other colleagues, and we are doing a lot of research. So what I'm doing is, of course, trying to stay up to date what is happening in our research department, how we are developing, trying to have new contacts worldwide to see if we can find a partner to start somewhere else. And then, of course, also trying to communicate what we do and keeping up so everyone knows about us and being informed. That is mostly what I do. So I'm leading the team in Germany and being in contact with my Dutch colleagues. Also traveling to farmers, to events where we meet farmers and see how are they happy, how does it work, what are the circumstances in the market. There are many difficult topics for them right now as the avian influenza, feed prices and energy costs going up due to Ukraine war. So there are many circumstances that we also try to keep up and understanding, because that also, of course, influences us and our farmers the farmers that collaborate with us. So that's been really interesting, and that's mostly what I do. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of interesting stuff. And do you have any advice for someone who is running innovative companies like respeggt to better animal welfare?
Well, I think it's what we've learned so far is that you really need to keep up with the market situation and what also people in the industry like and want, because we came from completely out of we were not part of the poultry sector, and we needed to integrate into a bit conservative sector and working style. And we were so successful so far, I think, because we really adapted to them, we listened to them, talk to everyone in the supply chain, understanding what are your needs, how does the market work, how can we be beneficial for you, and not interfering too much in your daily business, and really being a positive benefit for everyone. And that's what we tried to do, and I think it worked out quite fine until now. And I think that's the best best advice I can give is to always listen and hear out what others in the industry that already exist have to say, and then you can take the best out of that and make your own thing.
Yeah, and do you have any thoughts on anything we haven't covered so far?
Well, in general, I don't think so. I think I think it's really a blast to see how much interest is more and more coming and increasing worldwide to this topic, and I'm really happy about that. I think it's great that everyone is so involved into making animal welfare a bigger topic in food production, and I think that's what we all have in common and should seek on doing.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Carmen, for your time. I know you have a very busy schedule, but hearing from you has been really insightful. The practice of culling of male chicks is especially gruesome and one of the worst abuses of factory farms, and I'm hopeful and excited to see just how much progress that will accrue, and respeggt is going to do amazing stuff to tackle the issue. It was a genuine honor talking to you, and thank you so much for all that you do for animals.
Thank you so much for your interest. Always happy to have an interview and talk to people that are interested in this topic. Thank you so much.